Barely Sapient here. On April 22nd, Oblivion Remastered was released by Bethesda. There had been rumors that it might happen for quite a while, but it seemed like they were just rumors. And so this was mostly a shadow drop. And it took most of us by surprise. And what a nice surprise it is. Since the original Oblivion is almost 20 years old, it makes perfect sense that Oblivion Remastered has much better graphics. So right off the bat, you can see the new game has much better graphics. One of the major differences as well is it seems like your weapons do more damage. Combat is a bit easier than the old game because of that. It seems to feel a lot more like Skyrim does.
Blue team coward!
It's not quite the same as that either, though. I will be reviewing some of the differences between the original Oblivion and Oblivion Remastered. As you can see, this is the original, and its graphics weren't bad. At first glance, early in the game, most of the differences are graphical in nature or in controls. Even though combat is handled a little differently, most of the game is the same in the new one. In both versions of the game, one of the first things you do is to design your character. It has lots of options about the shape and size of the face, skin tone, body type, those sorts of things. One of the quirks in the original game is you could really make a weird looking character. This is what I mean by weird or strange. I think the new game retains that quirk in that you can still make your character look incredibly strange if you want to. Well, this certainly hasn't changed between games. If you take a look at your character screen immediately after giving your attributes, your race, name, etc., you still don't have a birth sign or a class. In either version of the game, you have to play it for about 20-25 minutes before you get to select a character class or birth sign. After your character creation screen, it doesn't take long to get into the action, and this is actually part of the tutorial. You will also learn things like how to find your inventory, how to pick locks, how to shoot a bow and arrow, do basic combat, things like that. Early on, you'll get to choose your birth sign, and your birth sign will give some sort of increased of points for one of your physical attributes. It could be strength or speed or magicka, something like that. It could be a couple, it could be a few, it could just be one, but with a lot of points. But yeah, there's a lot of choices for your birth sign, and that is part of what defines your character. You'll get to choose your class, or you can create a custom class. Your class will define your major skills, and your major skills are the ones that you level up to level up your overall character. There are three main types of classes. There's combat oriented, there's magic oriented, and there's basically a thief class. Thief majors, where the major skills are well, lockpicking and sneaking and stuff like that. Each class has 7 major skills. There are also 8 attributes to your character as shown on screen. And there are 14 minor skills for a total of 21 skills for your character. See, before in the first Oblivion, I couldn't use a controller reliably on PC. It just wouldn't work. Now they've largely fixed that problem. And for a game like this, an action-adventure RPG, I think a controller is going to be preferable in a lot of cases. In the old game, it's mouse and keyboard on the PC. It works, but it can be a bit clunky, unlike first-person shooters. Combat with a mouse and keyboard in the old Oblivion is awkward and clunky because there's just too many keys to manage when you've also got spells involved using a keyboard and mouse. Also makes it a little unusual for shooting a bow and arrow, like in this case here. So in Oblivion Remastered, your shortcuts wheel, as you can see on screen, works the same way as it did in the old game. You pre-select spells or actions or items to use and that make it easier to do in combat. And this is largely unchanged in the game, and the only thing that has changed is the buttons to use them. To be fair though, the mouse and keyboard is a lot easier when dealing with the map in either game. Point and click just makes it really convenient, especially for something like this where you're doing fast travel, and you will do that often in Oblivion. Okay, so in the new game, the map is just not that easy to use with the controller. This is me trying to zoom in on something or actually just select something, like a specific place on the map, like a map marker, and it's hard to do. It's much easier to use the mouse, which, well, if you were trying to make a control scheme where you just use the controller, well, this isn't it. One of the things that might be unusual or hard to find is how to locate and use a mini-map or a local map within the game. Basically, you have to use the right trigger to zoom in as far as possibly can, release it, and then pull the right trigger again. In the original Oblivion, speaking with non-player characters sometimes would bring up an old quirk. Some dialogue options would trigger the use of a different voice actor in game, and it was kind of weird and kind of charming. It was part of the game's charm.
Me children. He's of course.
Hey, you're the one they call the hero of Kvatch, aren't you? The one that closed the Oblivion Gate and saved the city?
Thank you, kind sir.
It seems the new Oblivion has new voice actors. I don't remember this voice actor in the old Oblivion, do you?
I'm Irene Metric. If you needed to know more, you'd already know.
I suppose the real question is, the original was fun to play, is the remaster? And in my opinion, yes, the remaster is a fun game to play. The new game was a little bit more polished, especially the combat. The graphics are definitely better. And one thing that I look forward to is to see how mods are handled. Really how Bethesda handles them. The Emperor actually looks like Patrick Stewart this time from certain angles in the new game. For any of you that played the Game of the Year edition of the original Oblivion, this is a minor change in the remastered version. Places like Deepscorn Hollow, Frostcrag's Fire, you know, the ones that were given to you as a note and a quest at the beginning of the game, they're not anymore. You have to go find them before you actually get the quest. And this is what happened here. I went to Deepscorn Hollow, and that's when the quest activated for it. But I had to just go and find it. It was never marked on the map or anything like that, so that's a change. In the original game, graphical settings will not matter much out of any on most computer systems built within the last decade. Should be able to run the game at max settings at whatever the highest resolution your monitor supports. I tested Oblivion Remastered in both Linux and specifically Linux Mint 22.1 and Windows 11 24H2. To test this game, I settled at 1440p resolution, and I put the general settings to high. Although some of this is going to show custom, because I did change Lumen hardware ray tracing off and Lumen software ray tracing to low quality. I used FSR, and that's at a quality setting, and frame generation is turned off. I did this in both operating systems. Most of the footage is when I was playing in Linux Mint, because the game was more stable and playable at 1440p at the chosen settings. At those settings, this game was definitely playable on my system. I have an AMD Radeon 6950 XT, a Ryzen 5900X, 64 gigabytes of RAM, and I ran this game off an NVMe SSD. And with those settings, I was able to maintain roughly an average somewhere in the low 50s. Sometimes it would go all the way up to 60. I had VSync turned on, and sometimes it would drop down to the low 40s or sometimes even the high 30s frames per second. It was stable and playable though. In Windows it was a different story. There will become times when it stutters, and sometimes pretty badly. You can see it on the frame graph, and that's on the left top hand corner. This is with nobody around, no NPCs, and yet you still get these frame spikes, and it's annoying. This is right now at 1440p. Now here I'm going to change it. And that's now, I'm setting it to 1080p. Now I'm walking around again, and this is in town in Chadnall, and still you get the stutters, those frame time spikes that I was talking about earlier. Boy, in Windows you can really see it struggling in the arena. In Linux it does get down to about 30 frames per second in the arena. It's a very demanding area, but it's a lot more stable than Windows, and Windows drops into the 20s. Going forward on my hardware, playing this game in Linux makes more sense. This game in its current state will definitely melt your system. The original Oblivion is still fun to play, and when it came out it set the standard for open world RPGs. So Oblivion Remastered definitely has better visuals. It has a better control scheme, except for how it handles maps, but that's a minor complaint. The story is largely the same. The music is the same. There's some new voice actors. It still retains some of the quirks from the original game, which gives it some charm. So this game still has all the same NPCs. It still has all the guilds that you can join later on. And as a product, I think people who played the first Oblivion and loved it will love this as well. I think people who played Skyrim but didn't like the first Oblivion might have a chance of actually liking this version of it. And those who've never played any of the Elder Scrolls and then could probably easily jump into this game. We'll see. In my opinion, it's a fun game to play, and I think you should give it a look. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and comments are always welcome.